This time on Captain Castle's Laboratory, we're working on a Department 56 piece, the Alpine Village series, the Glockenspiel, which 1999 was when it was made. It's a porcelain house that's bulb lit, but it has a music box inside that is not really attached anymore, and it's got the key in the back to wind it. And we're going to see if there's a way to fix it. So I'm holding it with my finger so it doesn't fall backwards, but I'm looking through the light hole that the light goes into. Let's see if well, all the characters are spinning, but they did get stuck for a second. I don't know if the mechanism got wedged or if it's because the plate doesn't sit level. But so the reason I got this is because the mechanism inside broke free and it quits working. I'm looking at the house to see how it was assembled, and I can tell you how it's put together, but I'm going to tell you it's going to be a rather difficult endeavor. So, using some magnifying specs, this whole roof line right here under the lip is adhered, so this top piece technically comes off. Now, this being a porcelain house, it's not going to come off easily. But since the mechanism is working, and I'm going to use my magnifier to look inside now, and I want to add a little light, but I want to add something brighter than my flashlight. So our modern cell phones have these wonderful little lights on them that are decently bright. They're actually bright enough to shine through the porcelain, which is surprising. So I can see the mechanism. I can see the gears. The gears are metal, so I'm not too worried about them breaking. I'm going to try and show you on the camera in just a second. I also see that this here has been adhered. Then they ground the seam down. They did a decently good job. It's almost unperceivable. So, alright, so let's see if I can get this to show on the camera. So I'm still holding the mechanism with my finger so it doesn't slam on the inside. But if you look in there, trying to get it so my cell phone doesn't block the light. Let's see if I just use that light. You might be able to tell that the gears are metal if you can see them. And then if I shine through, you might be able to see the glow of the cell phone. Wink, wink, right there. So I can see it lights up this clear box where I can see all the mechanism. But if you look really closely down there, which again is probably hard to see, it's hot glued in, and the hot glue is broke free. But if you look right here, you can see a seam. It goes all the way around. You can put my fingernail underneath the columns. And the other way to tell, I'm gonna hold it where you can look through the window. You see that white that's right there above this guy I'm wiggling? That's the roof. That's this piece with a centering to allow it to fit into the porcelain and remain centered as they assembled it. So, if you have this piece and you need to open it up, you're going to have to superheat around this edge to break the resin or the glue, and then carefully pry up on this. I would use a flexible spudger to start, this type, versus a solid spudger, which is this type. They do have flex, but you can see that's about as far as I can flex it before it wants to stay bent. Whereas this, you can letter C and then goes back straight. And I would slowly, using spring pressure, work your way around, and I'm sure it would take a really long time. But if yours only separated, like this one did, where the hot glue has just come apart and it's flopping around on the inside, you can fix it from the bottom. Using the magnifying glasses so I can get a better look at the glue, I can see where the glue is separated. As a matter of fact, I can touch it with my fingers. So I can see the entire mechanism. And what's nice with this key in the back, the winding mechanism key, you can actually use this key to, you can see here, I can move the whole thing. So you can actually get hot glue in there without getting it onto the gears, and then use the key to line it up in the center, and you're good to go. Probably have to break a lot of this old hot glue off, which in that case I'd use something solid like this spudger or a screwdriver, something you can reach in here and try and get some of this old yellowed glue off. So I'm going to hold it back with my finger. Whatever glue they used is really strong. Slid out of my finger. Alright, if you can get the glue, great, but there's not a lot of glue for me to chisel off. It's a lot of residue. Maybe most of the glue has come out. Whatever this is definitely not hot glue. Just got a little piece off. It is a resin-based glue. Alright, I'm going to try and hold it a bit better. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to try this. Turn on my glue gun, and I'm going to see about pouring the glue on the inside and probably using the spudger to push it into the crevices before it hardens. The SureBonder glue sticks do take a little bit longer to cure than standard glue sticks, so I should have enough time to make a bead and then feed it into the lips if I can't pour it in there when I get this nice and hot, and then push this down. Now when you push this table down, in the very center is a stud or a column, like a little table they're dancing around. Try and use that to push down and not push on the tree or the little guy, and then use the key to get it into its groove. So when I get it into its groove, it's nice and tight because it actually has a three-sided flange on the inside that it sits in, and then it locks it in place. If I push on the key down, it'll lift it out of its groove. But since I have it lined up, yeah, she's good. Look at that. If your music box breaks while I'm waiting for this to heat up, again, you're going to have to superheat this and then pull the key out and then take it out through the top. If your characters break, or the Christmas trees, which I can't imagine the trees breaking, the characters, sure, there's 3 of them. If you can't feed them through the window and glue them back in, then I would recommend taking the top off. Just be aware, this is 23 going on 24 years old now, because I don't know when this came out in the year of 1999. I mean, it's only January right now that I'm filming this of 2023. So you do risk chipping the paint. So if this is in a display and you're not concerned about the back, I would start prying in the back, so if you chip any of the porcelain or the paint on the porcelain, it's not as noticeable. But you need to get this hot, and I would normally say something like this you can put in the oven and get it hot enough to break the glue, except that the characters are plastic, the spinning table is plastic and the box that houses the mechanism is plastic. If the box that housed the mechanism was metal, and this plate and the characters were metal, or a heavy-duty resin, I'd say a low temperature in the oven, 120 to 160 degrees, would probably be fine to try and pop this apart. Now this side does separate, and what I was saying about their glue seam is I can see it on the inside, and there's a seam right here that they did a really good job of smoothing in, but there's a little spot where they did the casting. But where this door is that connects the two together, you can see on the inside it's glued. So it comes off, but most likely this will break, because this seam is so tight and so good with their bonding procedure. They did a really good job on this one of making it look like it's one solid piece when it actually appears to be three. I'm not counting the removable stuff like the trees that were probably added on after being removable, because that one looks like it was glued on after the fact, and maybe this one too. But I'm talking that this is a three-piece porcelain house, left, bottom right, and top right. So my glue gun's hot, it's starting to dribble. So let's see what I can do. So I got to push the thing up so it's no longer pressed up against the ledge. And I'm probably going to have to do this standing up so I can actually use gravity to my advantage. And there's the dribble. So I'm going to get a nice, that way I get the hotter part, because that was the part in the heater. And now I'm going to pour it in. It's pretty close to where I needed it. I did pretty good right there. I'm going to push it in. Now I need to do the other side, which is going to be slightly harder, because that's the side with the gear. So I can't overdo it and get it into the gear hole, because the gear is not inside the plastic housing. The gear is proud. So now we'll use this to help line her up. My finger out of there. Okay, she's still crooked, so let's stop the mechanism and do an adjustment before this cures. The reason I fired it up was to make sure that nothing was bound from the hot glue. Of course, it is now curing really fast. Better. It's a little better. Apparently this table comes unscrewed. That's not good. Let's make sure it's nice and stop it real fast. So she's still not quite perfectly aligned, so it's still not 100% cured. So I'm going to try and push it off of the glue and then redo it real fast. Apparently when I rotated it back over, it slid to one side and it's rubbing the porcelain, which is that sound you hear when I wind it. So course, now it's all sticky because it's got new glue. That's better. Interesting. Might actually have to take it all apart because the table unscrewed and the gear isn't lining up anymore. Oh, the gear acts as a lock. Oh, interesting. Oh, did it come with instructions? Yeah, because it does have its original box. Okay. I've done some music boxes, but each box is different. And apparently if you push the thing in, it stops the wheel, but if you back it out, it allows it to engage the music. I didn't know that. So let's push it in. And unlock it. That's weird. There's the key. I don't understand. Not understanding why the gear isn't engaging anymore. All I did was realign the plate so the top disc doesn't hit anything. But now the gear is only grabbing like 3 teeth and then skipping. And there's a space. It doesn't move. Maybe there is something broke inside the mechanism from bouncing around being disconnected with this, you know, when I got it. So I might actually have to superheat this and separate it, because also this has unscrewed. It's not turning any of the mechanism, which indicates that the little screw in the center has separated, which is awesome. Alright, I'm going to fire up my heat gun. And I know I'm going to have to make it really hot, so I'm going to start at 400 degrees Celsius, which is insanely hot. It's going to cause some minor burns if you're not careful. Again, I'm going to work my way around it. If you see anything happening to the paint or anything, you need to back off. So if the paint starts to get glossy, it means you're turning it back into a liquid. Gosh, it smells so good. It's not even at the temperature yet, and it already smells like it's burning. It's the stuff on the tip of the gun. But it's now at 400 degrees Celsius, which is freaking hot. Figure out Fahrenheit later. Now, what's nice about using the pen heat gun is these nozzles that have this fine tip nozzle, so I can direct the heat right onto the seam. Instead of using a broad nozzle which directs the heat everywhere. If you're doing something like this, definitely do not use a... I think this is getting a little too hot. This thing's smoking. Adjusting the temperature a little bit. This corner is lifted a hair. See if I can get this corner to separate. I'm now running it at 275, so it quits smoking my gun. I think the tip is too small for the hot temperature. It's not moving enough air across it. I'm watching the seam get wider, but it's still not coming apart or it has any movement. You can see the glue, whatever the resin type glue they used back in the late 90s, I can see it oozing. Normally I'd say you want to glue this back together with super glue. You might want to use something a little bit stronger, like a resin glue, the type that has to sit for a day before you can touch it. This front area is my concern, because I have it glued to this window fascia, which is cast into the house. It's a thinner piece of material, more likely to crack. That's what I'm trying to prevent. I'd love to put some heat in here, but I'm afraid of melting the characters. I'm going to cool my gun down and then change tips. I'm not going to touch it at 300 degrees Celsius. So I'm letting it do its cool down procedure right now, and then it takes about 5 or 10 minutes. I'm going to change the nozzle and see if I can apply more heat. I got a little bit of separation in the back, but that's all. So this front isn't moving at all. The seam's not getting any bigger. I'm concerned that when they adhered it to this window frame, that's going to be a problem. So I'll be back shortly once I can touch that and swap it out for a different nozzle. Guess I should find my nozzle. There they are. So, alrighty. I'll be back in a few. Okay, we're back. This thing is insanely hot. I had to heat it to 460 degrees Celsius, which is 860 degrees Fahrenheit, to get this thing to start to separate from the resin glue. And I'm not going to lie, this thing is really hot at the moment because it literally just popped off 15 seconds before I hit the record button again. Yeah, it is ungodly hot. And I just kept going around and around and around, and then checking it every minute until I finally started getting some flex. And then once I got some flex, this came off. This thing is actually still hot, so I'm not going to keep touching that. So I'm going to pull this thing out. Let's get this out. So here's the inside. And let this cool, because again, it's insanely hot. And here's the characters. And there's your music box. So what's happening is this metal gear is slipping on this metal gear when I try and wind it all the way. So now that it's out, we can get a better look at it. And even make a better look at it. Let's remove this plastic plate. This plastic plate's what holds the whole thing in. It has nothing to do with the music box as far as function or structure. It's just there to hold its center in the house. I'm going to remove that. As you can see, it just screws right into those two bosses. So let's just get that out of the way. And now it's easier to clean and get all this glue residue off. So wind the key back up and see what's going on with this. So when I turn it, see, it's slipping like the music box part binding. All the gears are turning, but this isn't. There we go. I'm watching the gears, and this turntable is not turning. Why not? There's no resistance on it whatsoever. Either there's a screw under this, or it's pressed in, and that's what I'm checking on right now. I do see a Jesus clip or a C clip. Sorry if you never heard it called a Jesus clip before. If you haven't seen any of my other videos, it's called the Jesus clip because when it comes off and it flies across the room, you go, Jesus, because you can't find it anymore. So, it does have a clip. I don't know the song it's playing. If you do, you can put it in the comments below. I don't know if it says it on the box. I didn't see it, but I wasn't reading the box for the music. I was reading the box for if the mechanism binds or not. Because this slack right here is what is concerning me. Because the slack is what's causing it to slip teeth. And this gear is flush with the shaft, And this gear isn't, and I don't know if it's supposed to be or not, because it is a knurled shaft. But what I want to do is check all the micro gears in here. So I'm using the magnifiers and letting it do its thing. Let's get this thing spinning again because I hit the little counterweight. And see if we have a broken gear, because we got one. Not counting the metal gears, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plastic gears, maybe 6. I can't see underneath. I'm not a big fan of disassembling music boxes because of the springs, but we might have to pull down another layer here. I really like to get this table off. I'm going to have to apply heat to this center section because it is glued on. I wonder if there's a screw under this pillar that they're dancing around. So I'm going to turn the heat gun on. I'm not going to have it anywhere as hot. This is at 100 degrees Celsius, which is 212 degrees Fahrenheit. And I'm using a wide nozzle so I don't overheat. Well, the reason my gun was overheating, or my pen, was because it was too much heat for the diameter of the nozzle, and I was actually burning up the heat pen, so I had to go to a wide nozzle, which is wide open. I'm trying to point it between everything at the base. I could put a nozzle back on it. I'm going to see if I can just get it warm enough to hopefully come off. Nope. Not warm enough yet. Yeah, if I turn this table, it's completely separated from that gear like it's unscrewed. If I can maybe wedge the gear and see if it is a screw, and maybe it'll spin. Get a small blade screwdriver to wedge the teeth real fast. You get more resistance turning it to the left than I do to the right. So it might just be coming unscrewed because it might have left-hand threads. Turning it to the left, it engaged. And I might tighten it up a little bit more. So all I'm doing is sticking the screwdriver in the teeth of the gear so it doesn't turn on me. And then I'm just twisting this. I'm still concerned about this. Let me see if this moves at all. Let's take the winding key off. That is a separate piece. And I want to check to see if this gear is out of alignment, as I still can't wind the music box fully because it's jumping teeth, and I don't want to break the teeth because they're metal, and they're a cheap metal. It's pot metal. The music box is made in Japan. I'm just going to tap this and see if it moves at all. and see if it's an alignment issue and that's why it's jumping threads. So also, I noticed this gear isn't round. This gear has a flat spot on it. It looks like it was cast. I don't know if you'll be able to see it on the camera or not, but if you look right here, there's a flat spot. So you hear the clicking. I'm wondering if that's the lock, if you have to turn it to the flat spot to get it to disengage. I did move the gear out, maybe a 1/16 of an inch. Let's see if that helps the alignment any. Because when you turn it, it keeps pulling away. And if you know anything about gears, if gears don't mesh, they like to strip teeth. That is definitely a tight fit. And it might need lubrication too. Back on. You can't screw it up because it has a boss that it fits in, and it's the only 2 screw holes that line up, since there are more than 2. I think it's a lubrication issue. I think it's binding, because if I put a little tension on the key, it starts back up, and then you can see that it slows down here first. I might have to, and there's that flat spot where it doesn't touch anything. That's why I can move the key back and forth. So, it's going to need a little bit more work to figure out what's going on with this mechanism. I'm going to have to find some nice slick lubrication for it. I bet you if I unscrew this, it'll start to do its music without any issues. So I think the problem is how hard it was for me to take the drive mechanism out to check the gear. So that it's binding it. Like I thought. It's still slipping the gear up here, so I'm still going to try and take that apart. But this turns so tight. It should be nice and smooth, and then it gets caught because it's not quite straight. The shaft has got a distortion. So I'm going to get a bottle brush cleaner set, and I'm going to go in here and polish that out. Wipe this down. There's fine scraping right here at the end where it fits in that boss. The inside of this boss is all tore up. It had dust in it. I'll try to show you on the camera here. And I'll see if I have some graphite lube. I would normally use a dry film, but this is metal on metal. The dry film isn't going to last very long. The magnifier, this shaft is good. It's just a little bit more polished at the end. But the inside of this is just tore up. I don't know if it's going to show it well in the camera, but I don't know if you can see the striations. So, I do have generic machine oil. That might work in here too. It's an oil for any metal parts on a machine that move. This is technically a mechanical machine, not a electric machine. So if I don't have any graphite, I'll try that. But first I'm going to polish this. What I do is I take the bottle brushes and I go through by hand, and then if that doesn't work, I chuck up a copper one in a drill and go back and forth so that the copper one starts to smooth out any of the abrasions. Then you go back through with like brass and nylon to polish it. You don't want to go too much because this pot metal will wear down fast, and then this will have a lot of slop in it. I just want enough to where the striations are gone and this can spin smoothly. I'm going to try and separate this so I can get to this mechanism and find out why this is spinning freely from the music box. Because it spins faster than the music box does if I do it this way. Now it's not even engaging. There we go, now it's engaging. So I think the post that goes through that's underneath this has either broke free, or the gear on the bottom, the nose where it's pushed through, has cracked and it's slipping. But I can't tell. And the music box separates from this with screws underneath this disc. So I can't separate the music box because there's a screw right here. Here's the bottom of it. It's inside this plastic. And there's a screw right here. And the screw holes are underneath this disc. So I got to get this disc off with the 3 characters, 3 trees. So first I'm going to go through my brushes and see what I got that I can use to polish that out real quick and see what kind of lubrications I got. We want to make this thing work again like it used to when it was brand new back in the late 90s. So we're going to pause again while I go get some stuff and see what I can do about making these 2 components work better. And then I'll work on that. So bear with me. I'll be back in a few. Sorry for the delays. Alright. I got the center off. It was just held on with glue. And there's the glue. And it is threaded. This is threaded, and this threads onto it. And this piece is what's slipping. So the shaft, that's why it has the spring clip, is threaded. And that's why I could see the gear turning, but not this, because this is stripped out. Once I got it, I held up my finger, I got to start unscrewing, it just got stopped and it slid right off. So, easiest way to fix that is put a little bit of glue on here. Rubber contact cement, Elmer's glue, hot glue, super glue, and then thread this back on until it stops, and good to go. So that should take care of that. And then a little hot glue to hold this thing back on, because that's all this is. This is just hot glue. It came off at 110 degrees Celsius on my machine. Most heat machines are in Celsius. So, yeah. Anyhow, and then I went ahead and polished this, so now this thing spins beautifully. As you can see, I can just spin it around. And I used some all-purpose oil from Singer. Yes, the sewing machine company. And then I got this, which is it was a copper and cotton double helix of material for polishing a .22 caliber barrel on a rifle or handgun. because this is actually the same size. It is 22 caliber. So the reason I say it was is because the material from this pot metal is now permanently infused in here, so this will be going in the garbage. But now this doesn't bind, and it spins nicely. So, and you don't just hammer it. You go slowly and you work your way back and forth, and then you add a little bit more oil and do it again, and then you have to clean out the hole to get rid of any of the material, and then put a little bit of oil on it, and now it slides in and out relatively easy. So, and it spins beautifully. So I'm going to use this stuff to lubricate it. I'm going to put a little drop, let it run down inside, and good to go. And fun fact, Singer sewing machines also used to make firearms for the United States government during World War II. So sometimes all the parts that they use to do isn't all bad as far as people's inhibitions with firearms. You can use things for other things, as I tell people. So, but since it's out and you now have access to the screws, you can unscrew this and we can get a closer look at the plastic gears just to make sure they're not damaged. I don't foresee them being damaged. The reason I say that is they're turning. And if they weren't turning, they would wouldn't have any music. So, and when I did look it up, it's the music, because I grabbed the box, and it is Strauss Emperor's Waltz. Sorry. So I've never heard it on a music box, just on a piano or an orchestra, so I didn't recognize the tune. So, with some magnifiers, I'm looking at the black gears that are right here, and they all look to be good. That's okay. Ah, this gear has a flat spot too. Interesting. This gear is just held on with threads. I'm going to tighten it up a little bit more than they had it, so it's not so easy to come off. In case you're wondering, it's a Sankyo mechanism, again made in Japan. Everything looks okay. I see no broken material or any chunks of stuff in here like dust or dirt. So, double check these two plastic gears and make sure they're not cracked in any fashion. They seem okay. I'm going to put a dab of this on here too. That way I don't have different oils. So I want to try and get it underneath the edge of the gear and get it into the shafts. Make it spin a little easier. And because this one, I'm try not to get it on the thread. I'm going to try and just get it to go down into the actual shaft and soak up the excess. Now I'm just going to clean the threads. So let's reassemble it. Make sure it works good. Didn't expect a music box that takes me an hour and a half to rebuild, but it is what it is. Music boxes always seem to be the hardest, and I don't know why. That was a problem with doing the Unescos in the past, is those are really hard. And technically, Unesco is Department 56, same company. I don't know when they became the same company, but it may have been around this time, since this is a Department 56 music box. Alright. Put just a dab of super glue on the threads, since technically you're probably never going to unscrew this thing. There we go. Is just a little bit of thread left. I'm just trying to salvage what I can so I can screw it on. Now I'm going to have to hold the gear, so I'm going to use a screwdriver again. There we go. And now we'll put this back on. Yeah. Go. Let's see how it works. Put the key back on. Every time it hits those flat spots on either one of the gears, it does that jumping. That's weird. But still doesn't want to go by itself. I really wonder. There we go. No. Apparently it's just temperamental. At least this is cooled down. Now we can break all the glue off, old and new. There. I did a pretty decent job of getting the glue under, and this is the hole I was talking about that you don't want the glue to fall into, because that hole is the gears. It's always the fun stuff when you have to remove all the ancient glue. this appears to be a hot melt glue, but you don't want to get this too hot because you can warp this plastic. I already did. There's a little divot right there. That's from me trying to heat up everything to get it out. Because of course I had to reheat my glue because it, when you get it hot to move it around, it cures back solid again. So when I reheated it again, apparently I stayed in one spot just a little too long, and it caused a little deformation on the edge of the plastic. So that's why I keep moving the heat around. It's just hopefully prevent that from happening, but unfortunately sometimes you can't be perfect. So I'm going to screw this back onto its base. So it goes like that, so it can be dropped back inside. And if you think I'm forgetting about the column, I'm not. I want to fire up the glue gun to glue both the base on and that center section on at the same time, so I don't have to keep turning it on and off, on and off, on and off. So because being battery operated, it doesn't turn off if it's not being used. It just runs continuously. So conserve battery power. I turn it off when I know I'm not going to need it for a while, just to conserve the battery power. I do still use the plug-in ones, not as much. I do still use them though. I like the battery one because when I'm done with it, I can stand it up like it's standing and then move it out of the way. With the battery ones, you got to watch the cord, and then you go stand it up, the cord moves, and the thing falls over, and then you got to pick it back up so you don't have it burn or melt into something. Okay. So, next step is I'm going to try and see if any of this will come off without breaking the porcelain. I'm also going to try and get my new glue out of here. It's still on here. So this will set back down in here. Like that. What's nice is I can now make sure we're centered. Looks pretty good. That lines up. So, good. Now we'll fire up the glue gun. It's my last glue stick. Now I'm going to have to whip out that big 77-foot roll I have. If you haven't seen it, you're going to see it shortly. I've showed it a couple times in videos. But yes, SureBonder sells them in sticks that are whatever they call these, 4-inch. Yeah, 4-inch sticks. They sell them in 12-inch, 18-inch, and then they sell a roll, which will be the next thing. I'll probably just cut the roll to sections I need. But before I bought the roll, just bought a baggie of sticks. So I know some of these videos are long. I know the two that I recently posted are pushing 2 hours each, and that doesn't even count what wasn't filmed. In the YouTube settings, you can change it to double time or time and a half and watch things faster, so you can find the spot that you're looking for easier. You can also skip forward 5-10 seconds at a time with your arrows, or you're tapping your screen if you're watching it on a mobile device. Because I try to show you as much as I can without making it monotonous. Sometimes you don't really have a choice. But like when I got this hot and took it apart, it's like another 20 minutes of me heating this thing up. So y'all would get really bored with that long, just watching me spin the house in front of the heat nozzle. While I wait for the glue gun to get up to temperature, I'm just going to remove some of this hard glue. Try and get a better mating surface. I'm only removing the stuff that's lifting. I'm not going to remove it all, but just the stuff that has an edge. Like that. This came off pretty clean. There's a spot right here and right there. Other than that, all the glue stayed on the house. But here's your alignment. So once it's in there, it keeps it relatively centered. So that's a nice touch. I think the glue gun's getting warm. Almost. It's just starting to drip, but not enough to push it through. So whatever adhesive this was they used back in the 90s, it's lasted more than 2 decades, and it was a pain to remove. So whatever they used was high quality. Just notice the house number is 1306. Apartment 56 usually makes everything with a 56 in it. We actually were talking about that yesterday. That they have some new pieces for 2023 where the house numbers are, where the numbers have nothing to do with 56. They thought that was kind of weird because every once in a while they do a thing where you can go see it in person. And that's what I did yesterday. Apartment 56, you probably heard me mention it a few times, is a lot nicer to deal with than some of the other companies. They actually want you to fix your stuff versus the companies that tell you to just go buy a new one. I scraped off the extra glue that might squish into the opening for the gears. Let's get this screwed on real quick and make sure she is centered. Centered. Looks good. Check the bottom. I'm going to hold it because I know it's not cured. I want to make sure none of the glue oozed into that hole where the gears are. And no, it did not. That's why I scraped it off. It's the small stuff you got to watch. It's the small stuff that will stop your things working faster than the big stuff. If you watch the ski one that I rebuilt, when the hot glue oozed and got onto the mechanism, I had to tear it all apart because it went in too far. So you just gotta watch what you're doing. And if you screw up, don't be upset, it happens. I think that clicking is it hitting the end of its spring and it's just jumping because it clicks when it hits the two flat spots. It just doesn't have a good spring. I think the spring's wearing out because there's nothing impeding it anymore. It's lubricated, cleaned. It's not rubbing anything. Just fixing the trees because I pushed them over. Make sure they're standing up straight. And then for this, I use the clear Gorilla Glue, which has a set time of 24 hours. This is equivalent to what this is. It's insanely strong. And once it cures for 24 hours, if you ever have to take it apart, it is really hard. I'm not going to put such a large surface area like they did. I'm going to do it a little bit thinner, and I'm going to avoid the window completely. So if it has to come back apart, we don't have to worry about breaking this frame. I'm just going to put a very thin on the back. So I'm only going to do 3 sides. The 2 sides are thicker. It's a lot thinner in the back. And I'm going to put nothing in the front past these columns. So I'm just going to put a little dab there, a little dab there. And I found that this stuff, even though it has a super long setup time and cure time compared to others, it works so much better. I've used so many different glues over the past 5.5 years doing this that I've now found the ones that work best for what I do. And hopefully that helps you all with what you do. So I'm just going to squeeze it down to make sure we get all the air out of it. Looks good. The only damage to this is there's a small little chip here when it popped off. I'll see if I have some paint that's close to the color and touch it up real fast. That's what I said about porcelain. That's one of the reasons I like the resin and plastic houses. They're less likely to do that. But that's not horrible. I said I should be able to mix up a couple of paint colors and try and blend it well. Probably mix up a light brown and a little yellow, maybe a mustard yellow. Get it as close as I can and dab it right on. I'll do that after it sets, since I just glued it back together. And like I said, it's going to take 24 hours for this cap to be able to where I can lift the whole thing from the cap. So, this has been the Department 56 Alpine Village Series Music Blocks Glockenspiel from 1999. So, no real parts needed to fix it. Only thing I needed is tools and lubrication. So, if you can't fix it from the bottom because it broke free, then heat this up. You saw the glue, it's all the way around. I used a heat pen and it got really, really hot to break it down. Then once you do that, get it off. Don't burn yourself because 860 degrees is the heat coming out. So the porcelain's probably close to 800 by itself. So watch your fingers and don't drop the unit. Then you can pull the center mechanism out once you take the key out of the back. If the center mechanism is still glued in, take the heat gun, heat pen, point in it from the bottom, try and get the glue to loosen up a little bit, and then just pop it out. If your mechanism is bound up, lubricate it, clean it, lubricate it. If it's all gouged like this one was, I should have showed you it polished. It was nice and shiny. I forgot to. You can use a polishing brush, a bottle brush that's metallic. If you have a 22 caliber cleaning kit with a bore polish, or you can use one of those, but be warned, it will destroy it. They're not that expensive. They're usually like $6–7. I'm not going to bother cleaning it. It's probably as old as me. I'm just going to throw it away. But you can also just use a standard cleaner, like a bore cleaner, and then use the bore polisher right after it, which is now just, they're 2 different pieces. This is old school where it's 2 in 1. or you can just use bottle brushes. You can get them at Michael's or Joann, so on and so forth, Amazon, and you can go in and out really fast with your finger, pushing it back and forth. A lot of them have a finger loop, so you can hold on to them. Or you can cut the end off and chuck them up into a drill, because the center is usually a wire. Make sure you spin it to the right, because if you spin to the left, you'll unwrap the wire. Let's see. And then I'm using all-purpose machine oil from Singer. You're probably never going to find this stuff anymore. I don't think they make it anymore. But a basic metal lubricating oil. 3-in-1 technically should work if you have some 3-in-1 oil. I just found this in a box of stuff that I acquired, and we've been testing it on stuff in the outdoor shop, and it works really good. We use it on the air compressor to lubricate the tools, and the tools work longer than using the standard air compressor oil to lubricate the air compressor tools. So we were actually pretty impressed with this, but you can use a basic oil on here as well. Once you got all that back together and cleaned, if the top piece separates and the threads are still okay, or it's just unscrewed, screw it back down. If you're concerned that the threads in the plastic are worn like these were, a dab of glue, super hot, Elmer's, so on and so forth. All you're using it for is to fill in the gap between the existing metal threads and the worn out plastic threads. And I just put a dot of super glue. It just took a minute, because that's only got about less than ½ an inch left in that bottle, so it takes a minute to get to the tip. Once you do all that, dab of hot glue from the hot glue gun to put the column back on. Screw it all back together. Make sure your plate's lined up so that's not too far to one side or the other where it might rub. And then make sure that the keyhole is as centered as possible, because I noticed that when it's centered, the disc is centered as well. Glue it all back together. Use a hard glue to hold the top on. So I use the Gorilla Clear Glue, which takes 24 hours to fully cure. So this will sit here on my bench until tomorrow night, when I'll put it back in its box. And then you can use super glue if you want. I like the hard glues because they last longer, but hard glues aren't designed to come back apart. So, and then once you do all that and it's cured and it's not going to ooze anything out and get stuck inside of its foam, or if it's just going back in your village, then just, it's an all year round village or something, just set it back and you're good. Then you're all set. Again, this one is a bulb lit unit. The bulb is in the box. There's the hole. And other than that, that's the whole thing in a nutshell. So hopefully it was somewhat educational for a Department 56 music box. Until the next repair, or next video in general, have a good one.